Okay, I'm going to explain to you the updated version, the current version of the Daily 3 inside the Language Atelier, which is part of the Life Atelier. So in the Life Atelier, we focus on three things: applying coaching tools to life, love, and language. The reason is we are an international community. We prioritize the values of connection, of impact, of expansion, and freedom. And a big part of that is being able to use other languages. Now, the method that I use is called the Daily 3. It involves 3 steps. They take ideally 15 minutes, but because we're doing them in a group in these ateliers, up to 30 minutes. And that gives us space to check in with each other, to get any support with each other as we're going. You can start to do this from a very, very basic level. I've started with A2 level French, and then I'm pairing it with having 30-minute conversations as part of the language salon with native speakers, also from our community. But let me just talk to you about the method itself. So this is so you can get ready for joining Life Atelier and the language sessions. Number one, pick a voice model. Now, a voice model is somebody who uses the language that you're learning, either as a native speaker or as an advanced level second or third language speaker. When you pick the voice model, you want to think about how you want to sound in the language you're learning. So try and think about, what industry are they in? What's their age ground, what age group, what background? So as an example, I'm using a podcast host at the moment who's also an entrepreneur. Why? Because I want to be able to start to pitch to French podcasts in a couple of months, to do interviews in French, and I want to really make sure that I'm confident that I'm using the right kind of language for an entrepreneur who is a coach in her 30s and has an online business and has her own podcast. Okay, so you pick your voice model, you pick the audio that you're going to use, and that can be a podcast episode, it could be a YouTube video, an Instagram video, doesn't really matter. All I would say is think about the level that you're at. So when we are using these these pieces of media to support us, we want to think about our objectives. So are you focusing on pronunciation? Is it about bringing grammatical structures in? Do you want new vocabulary? How hard is the audio that you've chosen for you to grab? If you're at a lower level with your current language, then you may find that you want to have quite a clean audio, maybe one that already has a transcript, like a TED Talk or something. And then as quickly as possible, you want to transition into more challenging resources. The reason is we want to work hard at the beginning, invest in the discomfort now so that it becomes easier even sooner. And a lot of people with traditional language learning, they will only look for resources that match exactly their level, which means they don't put themselves under a lot of pressure, which means that they progress quite slowly, right? Because in the real world, people don't speak slowly and use perfect language and perfect grammar, right? They use slang, they mix it up, they chop and change what they're saying. So we really want to start building that resilience so that you can do what the whole point of this is, which is to actually start to connect humans as quickly as possible and get in and have those conversations and start talking to people. So step one, we take the audio, we do the transcription. It's going to be about 25 seconds of audio, maybe 30, which should give you about 5 sentences, depending on what you're listening to. The reason we do this transcription is, number one, you are bringing in, as I mentioned, the right appropriate vocabulary and structures for your goals. Number two, you are going to identify the mistakes that you're making and the gaps in your own vocabulary super quickly. It's a very interesting thing about the brain. The brain does a lot of filling in the gaps, okay? And when you're speaking to somebody in your first language, you don't realize it, but you're not fully listening, okay? Your brain is filling in a lot of gaps. It's jumping ahead. It's anticipating what the person might say. It's thinking about lunch. It's thinking about what you want to do later. So then when we're actually listening to a transcription, let's say your first language doesn't have articles in it, or your first language doesn't have a certain tense. What will happen is your brain it just won't hear them because it will just filter them as irrelevant information, or it will replace them with information it thinks should be there. which means we mishear, okay? So when we do these transcriptions, it's a way to like get hyper-focused on where our current mistakes are so that we can start to rewrite them and start to fill in the gaps. Now, you would then quickly correct those. We spend 5 minutes on each of these elements, okay? So you're just going to be transcribing for 5 minutes. Then you would quickly correct them. And then we go into the second step. Now, the second step is writing. Currently, we are using the app, the ChatGPT app on our phones. Some people are writing by hand, but in these live sessions, in the live atelier, we're focused on really, as I said, like building your resilience and treating this like a high intensity, like a HIIT workout, okay? So when you type directly into ChatGPT, what that means is you can get feedback as you're writing. So you would say, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to act as my writing assistant. I have these specific goals. This week, I'm going to be picking up this conversation with you each day, and I would love for you to give me feedback on how natural my language is. Do I need any corrections? Do you notice that I'm using anything in a strange way? As we have the conversation, as we have the dialogue. And I will also ask it to help me focus on something like asking questions or explaining something or using a certain style of vocabulary. So that's your 5 minutes of writing. And when we do this live together, literally, I'll be setting a timer and I'll be like, okay, let's go. Let's write for 5 minutes. And then the final step is speaking. Now, again, with the ChatGPT app, the brilliant thing is you can just literally then tap. There's like a little symbol that has headphones. And we now start to have a spoken conversation. So you speak to the app, and again, you say, hey, now I'd like to start speaking practice. Again, can you give me any feedback as we're speaking? Can you keep your responses quite short? Because I'm prioritizing fluidity when I speak. Because if you don't tell ChatGPT to keep the answers short, they are very chatty and they give you a lot of information. And you can also say, I'm working on a British accent, or I'm working on sounding like a French person from Paris or from Toulouse or whatever. Can you give me feedback on any pronunciation pointers as we go? And ChatGPT will do that too. Now, at the end of that 5 minutes, you can either be done, right? Continue with your day. Know that you've really put in a significant step to building momentum with your language relationship. Or you can then say, hey, ChatGPT, finish for the day. Could you create a written summary of what we have covered? A table that has the key vocabulary, any relevant grammar explanations for my first language. And then ChatGPT will create a summary for you. And you can go back and review that in the evening, or you can review it before the next day. My experience has been, I've been doing this for 2 weeks now with French inside our community. What is astonishing is how little I need to review, because my brain has gone into learning mode, right? I've switched on, look for learning, look for learning. So I'm finding it fascinating. Like traditionally when I was at school, there was a lot of like sit, review your notes, you know, do all of this stuff. But taking the coaching approach, I have noticed my brain is working harder. So it's like when there's a new word, it is really making the extra steps to attach it to existing vocabulary. And I am learning so quickly. So are our community. So here we go. That's the daily 3. If you've got questions, post them. If you're watching this inside the platform and you want support with picking a voice model, tag me, share what you're using underneath the video.